There comes a moment in every life when excuses get tired, a moment when hope alone is no longer enough, when wishing feels empty and waiting feels expensive. That's the moment when three words step forward. I can, I will, I must. Not shouted, not dramatic, quiet, firm, final. You see, success doesn't begin with talent. It doesn't begin with luck. It begins with a decision that says, I can do better than this. I will no longer settle. I must change because staying the same costs me too much. Most people live in someday. Someday I'll start. Someday I'll commit. Someday I'll become disciplined. But someday is not a strategy. Someday is a delay dressed up as hope. The people who win don't wait for perfect conditions. They create inner certainty. They move from I hope to I can, from I can to I will, and finally, to the most powerful phrase of all, I must. Because when you say I must, options disappear, excuses lose their voice, and discipline takes control. I must wakes you up early. I must keeps you focused when motivation fades. I must carries you through the days when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. This is not about pressure. This is about purpose. This is the moment you stop negotiating with your potential. The moment you stop explaining your delays. The moment you stop living below what you know you're capable of. Because deep down, you already know the truth. You can do more. You will become more. And now, you must. And once you understand that, once you truly accept it, your life will never move the same way again. I can is where everything begins. Not with talent, not with luck, not with opportunity. It begins with belief. Most people never fail because they lack ability. They fail because they never gave themselves permission to try. They look at the mountain and decide, quietly, that's not for me. And in that moment, life listens. You see, before you do anything meaningful, you say something to yourself. And the words you choose shape the actions you take or never take. I can is not arrogance. It's not pretending you know how to do everything. I can simply means this. I am willing to believe growth is possible. And that belief changes everything. From the time we are young, we are taught limits. Be careful. Don't fail. Don't risk looking foolish. Play it safe. Over time, those messages sink in. We stop asking, what if it works? And start asking, what if I fail? But here's the truth most people never hear. Failure is not the opposite of success. Belief is. If you don't believe you can, you won't even start. And if you don't start, nothing changes. I can doesn't mean you feel confident. It means you act before confidence arrives. Confidence is not the cause of action. Action is the cause of confidence. You don't wake up one morning suddenly believing in yourself. You earn belief by keeping small promises to yourself, by showing up when it's inconvenient, by trying when you feel unsure. Every small win sends a quiet message to your mind. Maybe I'm capable after all. And that message compounds. Most people wait for proof before belief. Successful people choose belief before proof. They say, I can learn. I can improve. I can handle this. Not because it's easy, but because the alternative is staying exactly where they are. Understand this. Your life expands or contracts in direct proportion to what you believe you deserve and what you believe you're capable of handling. If you believe you can only manage small responsibilities, you'll live a small life. If you believe you can grow into bigger challenges, life will give you room to grow. Belief is not loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up quietly in your daily choices. Do you try again? Or do you quit? Do you learn? Or do you complain? Do you move forward? Or do you wait for permission? Every one of those choices is a vote for or against I can. Now here's something important. You don't have to believe in everything at once. You don't have to say, I can change my entire life. Start smaller. Say, I can improve today. I can take one step. I can keep my word just for today. Belief grows through evidence. And evidence is created through action. This is why self-belief is not emotional. It's practical. You build belief the same way you build muscle, with resistance, with repetition, with patience. And just like muscle, belief grows slowly at first. Then suddenly, you realize you're stronger than you thought. Let me tell you something most people never realize until it's too late. The voice in your head is not always telling the truth. Just because you feel incapable doesn't mean you are. Just because something is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's impossible. Feelings are temporary. Belief, once built, is durable. Every meaningful person you admire once stood where you stand now. Unsure, unprepared, doubting themselves. The difference is, they didn't let doubt have the final word. They said, I can try. And that was enough to begin. Life does not reward perfection. It rewards participation. When you say, I can, you step into the arena. You give life something to work with. You open the door to growth. And here's the real secret. Belief doesn't eliminate fear. It gives you the courage to act anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that fear will not be in charge. So, today, don't ask yourself if you're ready. Ask yourself if you're willing. Willing to learn. Willing to fail. Willing to grow. Because the moment you say, I can, your future begins to listen. And from that moment on, everything becomes possible. I will is different from I can. I can opens the door. I will walks through it. Most people live their lives in possibility. They know what they could do. They know what they should do. But very few people ever decide what they will do. And that difference is everything. I will is the moment when thinking ends and commitment begins. It's the line in the sand. It's the decision that says, no more waiting, no more excuses. Because excuses survive in uncertainty. They disappear when a decision is made. As long as something is optional, you'll negotiate with yourself. You'll delay. You'll justify. You'll explain why tomorrow is better than today. But when you say, I will, negotiation ends. There is nothing left to debate. You see, discipline is not built on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is built on decisions. When you decide in advance, emotions lose their power. You don't ask yourself how you feel. You act because you decided. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment never arrives. Progress belongs to those who move without guarantees. I will means you accept responsibility for the outcome. No blaming circumstances. No pointing fingers. No hiding behind conditions. It means you stop asking, what if it's hard? And start saying, even if it's hard, I'm going. Here's a truth many people avoid. Excuses don't disappear because life gets easier. They disappear because standards get higher. When your standards are low, excuses sound reasonable. When your standards rise, excuses sound dishonest. I will raises your standards. It changes the questions you ask yourself. Instead of asking, do I feel like it? You ask, what must be done? Instead of asking, is this convenient? You ask, is this necessary? And that shift changes your results. Understand this. Your life does not change when you feel inspired. It changes when you decide differently. A decision is powerful because it creates momentum. Once you commit, your mind begins to look for ways to succeed instead of reasons to stop. Your actions align. Your habits follow. Your identity starts to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You become someone who follows through, and that identity is priceless. Now let's be clear. I will does not mean the road will be smooth. You will feel tired. You will feel uncertain. You will question yourself. But commitment is not the absence of doubt. It's the refusal to quit because of doubt. Every meaningful achievement requires endurance, not intensity. Endurance. Anyone can start strong. Few can stay consistent when results are slow. I will is what carries you through the days when motivation is gone. It's what gets you out of bed when no one is watching. It's what keeps you moving when progress feels invisible. This is where most people turn back. Not because they can't continue, but because they never decided they must. Decision creates necessity, and necessity creates strength. When something becomes non-negotiable, you find a way. You adjust. You adapt. You persist. Not because it's easy, but because quitting is no longer an option. There is a quiet confidence that comes from saying, I will. Not loud, not boastful, just steady. It shows up in your posture, in your tone, in the way you handle pressure. You no longer explain yourself to everyone. You let results speak. And here's the greatest reward of commitment: self-respect. Nothing builds self-respect faster than keeping promises to yourself. Nothing destroys it faster than breaking them. Every time you follow through, you strengthen your character. Every time you don't, you weaken it. I will is a character decision. It's choosing the long-term reward over short-term comfort. It's choosing discipline over distraction. It's choosing growth over ease. And once you make that choice, life responds differently. Opportunities appear. Support shows up. Clarity increases. Not because the world changed, but because you did. So don't ask yourself what you hope will happen. Decide what you will make happen. Draw the line. Make the commitment. Remove the escape routes. Say it clearly. Say it calmly. Say it once. I will. And from that moment forward, excuses lose their power. I must is not a feeling. It's a command. I can gives you belief. I will gives you commitment. But I must gives you force. This is the moment when desire turns into necessity. When quitting is no longer an option. When excuses don't even show up for the conversation. Because I must is born from clarity. Most people want change. Very few people need change. And there is a world of difference between wanting and needing. When you want something, you work on it when it's convenient. When you must have it, you work on it regardless of conditions. I must is the voice that says, this has to happen. Not because someone told you. Not because the timing is perfect. But because staying the same is no longer acceptable. This is where transformation begins. You see, people rarely change because of inspiration. They change because the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. I must comes from that realization. It comes when you look at your life honestly, at your habits, at your results, at the gap between who you are and who you know you could be. And you decide, enough, not next month, not next year. Now, I must eliminates debate. There is no discussion with comfort. There is no negotiation with fear. When something is a must, you rearrange your life around it. You make time. You find energy. You create solutions. You don't wait for ideal circumstances. You move forward in imperfect ones. Look closely at people who succeed against all odds. They didn't have more resources. They had more reasons. Their desire was backed by necessity. They reached a point where failure was not an option because the cost of failure was too high. Not financially. Internally, they refused to disappoint themselves any longer. That's the power of I must. It shifts your identity. You stop asking, can I keep going? You start saying, I have no choice but to continue. And when quitting is removed as an option, effort increases naturally. Discipline becomes simpler. Focus becomes sharper. Distractions lose their appeal. Because when something truly matters, the noise fades. I must is also the point where sacrifice becomes acceptable. You give up comfort to gain confidence. You trade short-term pleasure for long-term pride. You let go of average habits to make room for extraordinary ones. Not because you enjoy sacrifice, but because you value the result more than the relief. This is where many people misunderstand success. They think successful people are more motivated. They're not. They're more committed. They've decided certain standards are non-negotiable. Showing up, doing the work, improving every day, no matter how they feel. I must means you don't need to be pushed. You are pulled forward by purpose. And purpose is powerful. When your goal is connected to something deeper than comfort, your family, your future, your self-respect, your potential, you find strength you didn't know you had. Weak days still come. Doubt still visits. Fatigue still appears. But I must keeps you moving. It whispers when you're tired. It steadies you when you're overwhelmed. It reminds you why you started when progress feels slow. This is the stage where persistence is born. Not flashy effort, not temporary intensity, but steady, unbreakable resolve. You don't need applause. You don't need validation. You know what you're doing matters. And that's enough. Here's a hard truth worth hearing. Your life will not rise to your wishes. It will rise to your standards. I must sets a new standard. It says, this is who I am now. This is how I live. This is what I tolerate and what I no longer will. From that moment on, excuses feel uncomfortable. Procrastination feels dishonest. Average effort feels unacceptable because your identity has shifted. And once identity changes, behavior follows. This is not about pressure. It's about priority. It's about deciding that your future deserves more than leftover energy, that your goals deserve action, not just admiration, that your potential deserves respect. I must is when desire grows teeth, when intention gains backbone, when dreams turn into demands. And when you reach this point, progress becomes inevitable, not because it's easy, but because quitting no longer makes sense. So don't wait for life to force you into change. Choose it consciously. Decide that this version of you is no longer acceptable. Decide that growth is no longer optional. Decide that becoming more is no longer a hope. It's a must. Say it quietly. Say it firmly. Say it once. I must. And then let your actions prove it. I can. I will. I must. Those words sound powerful. They feel powerful. But words alone don't change lives. Actions do. And discipline is what turns words into reality. Discipline is the bridge between intention and result, between desire and achievement, between who you say you are and who you actually become. You see, anyone can say, I can. Many people say, I will. But very few live, I must. Because I must demands daily proof, not dramatic effort, not heroic moments, but simple, consistent action. Discipline is not about doing extraordinary things once in a while. It's about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well every day. That's where most people lose the game. They rely on intensity. They wait for motivation. They surge forward for a few days, then disappear. But intensity burns out. Consistency builds up. A little every day compounds. A lot once in a while fades. That's why discipline always beats motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. It's getting up when comfort says stay down. It's starting when fear says wait. It's continuing when progress is slow and invisible. This is where character is built. Because discipline shows who you are when no one is watching. No applause. No encouragement. No instant reward. Just you and your standards. Successful people don't do what feels good. They do what works. They understand something most people overlook. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. That's why they choose discipline early, so they don't have to suffer later. Discipline protects your future. It protects you from wishing you had started sooner, from wishing you had stayed consistent, from wishing you had taken yourself seriously. Every disciplined habit is a vote for the person you want to become. Reading instead of scrolling, planning instead of drifting, practicing instead of procrastinating, saving instead of spending everything, learning instead of assuming you already know enough. None of these actions are dramatic, but together, they are powerful. Discipline works quietly, silently, patiently. You won't see results immediately. And that's where most people quit. They say, this isn't working. But it is working just beneath the surface, just like planting seeds. You don't dig them up every day to check progress. You water them. You protect them. You trust the process. Discipline is trusting the process. It's showing up before the results show up. And here's the beautiful part. Once discipline becomes routine, effort becomes easier. What once felt heavy becomes normal. What once required willpower becomes habit. What once felt like sacrifice becomes identity. You stop asking, should I do this today? You simply do it. That's momentum. Momentum is discipline repeated long enough to carry you forward. And momentum is dangerous in a good way. Because once it starts, stopping feels harder than continuing. This is how I can turns into confidence. This is how I will turns into credibility. This is how I must turns into destiny. Daily discipline gives meaning to those words. Without discipline, they are just phrases. With discipline, they become a way of life. Now, discipline doesn't mean perfection. You'll miss days. You'll stumble. You'll have moments of weakness. That's human. But discipline means you don't quit because you slipped. You don't abandon the plan because of a bad day. You return to the standard you set. Again, and again, and again. That's maturity. Discipline is self-respect in action. It's saying my future matters. My goals matter. My word to myself matters. And when your word to yourself matters, confidence grows. Because confidence doesn't come from thinking positive thoughts. It comes from keeping promises, especially the small ones. Every time you do what you said you would do, trust is built. Trust in yourself. And self-trust is powerful. It makes I can believable. It makes I will reliable. It makes I must unstoppable. So don't look for a breakthrough. Build one daily. With simple habits. With disciplined routines. With quiet consistency. Because discipline doesn't just change what you do. It changes who you are. And once who you are changes, your life has no choice but to follow. There comes a point on the journey where effort is no longer forced. Where discipline is no longer a struggle. Where consistency is no longer something you chase. It becomes who you are. This is the moment when success stops being something you pursue and starts being something you express. Because identity always wins. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. That's why lasting success is never built on motivation alone. It's built on identity. At first you say, I can. Then you prove it by trying. Then you say, I will. And you prove it by committing. Then you say, I must. And you prove it by disciplining yourself daily. Eventually, something shifts. You stop trying to be consistent. You are consistent. You stop hoping to improve. You expect improvement. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. This is where people become unstoppable. Not loud, not flashy, not arrogant. Quietly unstoppable. They don't announce their plans. They don't argue with doubters. They don't explain themselves. They simply show up again and again and again because consistency has shaped their identity, and identity removes resistance. When discipline becomes part of who you are, there is no internal debate. You don't ask, should I do the work today? That question no longer exists. You do the work because that's what you do. Just like a professional doesn't ask if they should act professionally. A leader doesn't ask if they should lead. A disciplined person doesn't ask if they should be disciplined. It's automatic. That's the power of identity. Once something is tied to who you are, it no longer requires willpower. Willpower is fragile. Identity is permanent. This is why temporary effort leads to temporary results, and why long-term success comes from internal alignment. You are no longer chasing a goal. You are living a standard. And standards don't need motivation. They need enforcement from yourself. This is also where patience becomes natural. You no longer panic when results are delayed. You no longer quit when progress is slow. You no longer doubt the process. Why? Because you trust who you've become. You understand something most people never do. Time is not the enemy. Inconsistency is. When identity is solid, time works for you. Every day compounds. Every effort adds up. Every small improvement strengthens the foundation. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop needing proof every week. You know the outcome is inevitable. That's confidence, not loud confidence, quiet certainty. And this certainty changes how you move through life. You handle setbacks differently. You don't collapse. You adjust. You don't blame. You learn. You don't quit. You recalibrate and continue because your identity is no longer fragile. Failure doesn't threaten who you are. It refines you. Criticism doesn't stop you. It informs you. Challenges don't break you. They shape you. This is what it means to be unstoppable. Not unstoppable because nothing goes wrong. Unstoppable because nothing knocks you off course for long. Your identity holds the line. And here's the most powerful part. When identity locks in success, your influence expands naturally. People watch what you do. They feel your consistency. They sense your standards. You don't need to preach discipline. You demonstrate it. You don't need to talk about belief. You live it. You don't need to convince anyone. Your results speak quietly and clearly. And one day, you look back, not with shock, not with disbelief, but with understanding. You see that success didn't arrive suddenly. It arrived gradually, built by daily choices, shaped by discipline, locked in by identity. You didn't become unstoppable overnight. You became unstoppable by refusing to stop. So remember this. Success is not something you chase forever. It's something you grow into. And once who you are matches what you want, resistance disappears. I can started the journey. I will committed you to the path. I must carried you through resistance. But identity finished the work. Become the person who does not quit. Become the person who honors their word. Become the person whose habits match their dreams. Because when identity locks in success, nothing can stop you. And now you see it clearly. I can awakens belief. I will commits you to action. I must makes your goals non-negotiable. Discipline turns those words into daily reality. And identity locks in your results, making success inevitable. This is the pattern of achievement. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a process, a practice that anyone can follow. The question is, will you follow it? Every great life begins with small decisions. Small actions repeated daily. A refusal to settle for average. A refusal to give excuses more power than your potential. The journey will challenge you. It will test your patience. It will demand effort when you feel tired. But the reward is priceless. A life of purpose, growth, and fulfillment. So start today. Decide clearly. Act consistently. Become who you must be. Your future is waiting. Your best self is ready. And your time to rise is now. Say it quietly. Say it boldly. Say it once. I can. I will. I must. And then live it. This is your life. Make it extraordinary.